In this video, I have collected those foods that are harmful to our joints and that we need to eliminate from our diet. Nutrition is one of the most important factors that affect the health of our joints. Joint diseases today are not only found in the elderly, but also in young men and women. If you already have pain sensations, it is certainly something that needs to be done urgently. But if you don't have pain yet, this is something to be aware of for preventative purposes, so that it doesn't come sometime in the future. This video will be extremely informative and helpful. So, if you want to become a master of your health, click like, and let's get started. Number 1 is phosphates and any foods that are rich in them. Phosphates, hidden in the foods we consume on a daily basis, are salts of phosphoric acid. At first glance, they seem harmless, because our bodies do need phosphorus to strengthen bones, teeth, and support cellular function. But when the balance is disturbed and phosphate becomes too much, a chain of destructive consequences begins. The body, in an attempt to restore calcium balance, takes calcium away from the bones, resulting in brittle bones, decreased cartilage density, and tooth decay. Research from the U.S. National Institutes of Health, NIH, shows that high phosphate levels increase the risk of osteoporosis by 45% in people over the age of 50. Processed meats such as sausages, ham, and wieners are the main source of phosphates in most people's diets. Just one sausage can contain up to 300 milligrams of phosphates, which is more than 50% of the daily allowance set by the American Institute of Nutrition, AIN. This not only leads to bone deterioration, but also slows down metabolism. Because of this, a person can gain up to 3 pounds a year without even changing their caloric intake. In addition, studies by the American Heart Association, AHA, have shown that regular consumption of processed meat increases the risk of cardiovascular disease by 23%. Crab sticks are one of the foods that are often perceived as a healthy alternative to meat. In fact, they are made up of surimi, a processed fish mince laced with large amounts of phosphates. One standard set of crab sticks can contain up to 500 milligrams of phosphates, which is more than most people can handle. This is especially dangerous for postmenopausal women who already have a 38% higher than average risk of osteoporosis. Processed cheese, which many people add to sandwiches and sauces, is rich in phosphates because of its production technology. Unlike hard cheese, which maintains calcium balance, processed cheese can contain up to 1,000 milligrams of phosphate per 100 grams. This not only destroys bones, but also triggers chronic inflammation in the body. Research from the Harvard School of Public Health links regular consumption of processed cheese to a 29% increased risk of metabolic syndrome. Fast food, canned meals, and carbonated beverages are hidden sources of phosphate. A single chicken nugget can contain up to 150 milligrams of these substances, while a can of soda can contain up to 60 milligrams. The American Dietetic Association, ADA, reports that people who regularly consume convenience foods get an average of 40% more phosphates than recommended. This leads to chronic inflammation, joint deterioration, and accelerated aging. So, phosphates are a hidden threat that we face every day. Foods rich in these substances disrupt calcium balance, destroy bones, trigger chronic inflammation, and slow metabolism. To protect your health, avoid processed meats, processed cheese, crab sticks, and convenience foods. By choosing natural foods, you will not only strengthen your bones, but also significantly reduce your risk of serious diseases. Number 2 is various marinades and smoked meats. Of course, if we are talking about a healthy diet, then in any healthy diet, this is, you could say, taboo. And we all know that smoked fish, pickled mushrooms, if we eat them actively, can very quickly turn into stomach pains. But the problem does not end with gastrointestinal disorders, because our joints suffer no less. And there's more than one reason for that. First of all, it's the same phosphates. And secondly, These products contain excessive amounts of salt. The debate is still going on. Is salt harmful or useful? But there really is an answer. Salt, of course, is useful and necessary within reasonable limits. It is from 2 to 5 grams of salt per day. Less than 2 grams is bad, and more than 5 grams is also bad. Here is the golden mean, from 2 to 5. In addition, excess salt impairs kidney function, which slows the excretion of uric acid and causes it to build up. According to the Center for Nutrition Research at Harvard University, high salt intake increases the risk of joint disease by 33%, especially in people over 40. And when you add in salt's impact on blood pressure and cardiovascular disease risk, it's clear that pickles and cured meats are not the best foods for your health. But every time we consume various smoked meats and pickles with just one meal, we can exceed our daily salt requirements by a factor of 2. And what does that lead to? Our joints will lose flexibility, swelling will develop, and over time they will become less and less mobile. Also, if we gain weight as a consequence of this diet, of course this leads to even more stress on the musculoskeletal system. Number 3 is tea and coffee. But here it is necessary, again, to make a reservation. In reasonable limits, tea and coffee will be more useful than harmful. But what is a reasonable limit? This is where the nuances and individual characteristics of the body begin. So tea and coffee contain a lot of purines. These are the chemicals that play a very important role in the formation of our DNA molecules. And of course, if we have a serious deficiency of purines, it will lead to a lot of health problems. The same can be said for excessive intake of purines. So it's the same with purines as with salt. You need a middle ground. If we consume too much tea and coffee, 5 cups a day, if not more, then as a consequence, we have a very high level of uric acid in our body. And then its crystals begin to settle on cartilage and vascular membranes, and as a result of this, can develop gout. Of course, if you drink a cup of coffee or a couple of cups of tea a day and feel great, and your joints do not hurt, I will not dissuade you in any case. But if you do have joint problems, and you do drink a lot of tea or coffee during the day, there is reason to think about cutting back. Studies by the U.S. National Institute of Arthritis and Musculoskeletal Diseases show that frequent caffeine consumption increases the likelihood of gout by 25% in men and 18% in women. It should also be said that besides coffee and tea, purines are also found in other foods. These are fish, especially fatty varieties and legumes. Although, of course, this is no reason to completely give up legumes and fatty fish, because in general, it is a healthy product. Again, if you have indications to do so. Purines are also abundant in sodas, offal, mushrooms, spicy and smoked foods, and chocolate. Number 4. Sorrel. Is sorrel really such a bad food? Actually, no. Sorrel is healthy. It's a very good herb. It's got a good dose of magnesium, vitamin B6, iron. And in general, of course, no nutritionist will say that sorrel is bad. But there is one but. It is if we consume sorrel in fresh form, then everything is great. But if we subject it to heat treatment, that is fried, stewed, steamed, baked, then oxalic acid begins to react with calcium, and the result is formed inorganic salt, which our body is very difficult to digest, and it can begin to settle, for example, in the form of kidney stones. Statistics from the U.S. National Center for Biotechnology Information say that excessive consumption of oxalic acid in cooked form increases the risk of stone formation by 33% in people with a predisposition to it. And further inflammation can occur, including in our joints. So stop eating sorrel, of course. You should not stop eating sorrel. But if you eat it in a heat-processed form, then here you should think about it. It is better to eat fresh sorrel than cooked, especially if you already have problems with your joints. Number 5 is sweets, and especially baked goods. Only a lazy person hasn't talked about the dangers of sugar. And I've also said many times on my channel that sugar is a major pro-inflammatory factor in our diet. sugar provokes a permanent flicker of inflammation, including in our joints. The American Rheumatology Association found that high sugar in the diet increases the risk of joint inflammation by 25%. Sugar also disrupts collagen synthesis and promotes collagen breakdown. And collagen is the main building material of our connective tissue, which is our skin, as well as cartilage and tendons. So, of course, sugar is the enemy of our joints. But why did I emphasize baked goods in this paragraph? Because baked goods are sugar plus yeast. So, if we consume sugar and yeast together, we get a solid dose of the same purines, which, in turn, provoke gout. Buns, croissants, and cakes are not only calorie bombs, but true inflammation provocateurs. If you already have joint problems, giving them up is the best thing you can do for your health. Replace baked goods with fruits, nuts, or natural sugar-free sweets to enjoy the flavor without harming your body. There are already videos on the channel about foods that are good for your joints. List of sources in the description below the video. Watch these videos next, and I look forward to your likes and comments.